Bristol F.2c Badger. Frank Barnwell had begun to think of a successor to the Bristol F.2b as early as November 1917. He designed a two-seater that was intended to be easily mass-produced. Its engine was to be either a 230 horsepower BR2 rotary or a 260 horsepower Samson water-cooled radial. This project was designated Bristol F.2c. The proposed engines were unable to give the design the necessary performance. It seemed to Barnwell, as it did to so many of his contemporaries, that the new 320 horsepower ABC Dragonfly radial engine held out hopes of greatly improved performance. The new engine was ordered in large quantities in 1918. It was planned that 4,135 Dragonflies would be delivered by June 1919. For the Dragonfly, Barnwell designed a completely new aircraft, which acquired the designation of the abandoned BR2/Samson F2C. In common with the Austin Greyhound and Westland Weasel, the Bristol F2C was appropriate to the RAF Type's 3A, short-range fighter reconnaissance, and 3B, corps aircraft for artillery observation. It was given the official name Badger, and three prototypes, F395 through F397, were ordered. The Badger was a single-bay biplane with rather narrow gap and sweep back on the upper wing. The crew were placed close together, the pilot having twin Vickers guns. The sides of the observer's cockpit were cut away under the scarf ring to improve his field of view. By June 1918, the mock-up had been officially inspected. Modifications subsequently suggested had been incorporated in the design, and the work on the fuselage and main planes of the F-3495 was well advanced. When it first appeared, the aircraft had a hemispherical cowling over most of the engine. The first Badger crashed on 4th February 1919, when an airlock in the petrol feed caused an engine failure. By this time it had been realized that the Dragonfly's troubles were serious, but a Badger fitted with that engine underwent official trials at Martlesham in September 1919. When the aircraft was rebuilt after the crash, a revised cowling that exposed more of the cylinders was fitted. In this installation, the air screw was given a small spinner. Cooling was always a problem with the Dragonfly, but in 1918 to 1919 it had not been realized that the fault was fundamentally one of bad cylinder design, and no amount of modifications to the cowling could make it satisfactory. At about the same time as the engine cowling was altered, F-3495 was fitted with a slightly enlarged rudder. It was still without a fin. By the autumn of 1918, the Cosmos Engineering Company, Limited, had decided to stake its future on its new 9-cylinder Jupiter radial engine, designed by A.H.R. Fedden. Soon after the armistice, an official development contract for a small number of Jupiters was given, but the company put much of its own money into the venture. The first Jupiter 1, a direct drive engine, was completed in October 1918, and was first run a few days before the armistice. Official interest in the Jupiter engine was prompt. On 24th October 1918, a modification to the contract stipulated that 3 were to be fitted with Dragonfly engines as specified in contract and to be known as Bristol Badger Mark I, and the 4th airplane is to be fitted with the Bristol Straker Jupiter engine, and to be known as the Bristol Badger Mark II. In fact, it seems that only the F-34 had the Dragonfly engine, for a Cosmos Jupiter was installed in the second Bristol Badger, F-3496, in 1919. Originally, this aircraft was flown with the standard armament and equipment, but by June 1919, the form of engine cowling had been modified. The Vickers guns and scarf ring removed, and the rear cockpit partly enclosed, its side apertures being glazed over. A low aspect ratio fin was fitted, and a plain rudder was hinged to it. The third Badger of the original prototype batch was not completed in its design to form. Its wings and tail unit were used by Barnwell in his Badger X, which was intended to be a sporting single-seater. It had a Siddeley Puma engine and a redesigned fuselage. The Badger X made its first fly on 13th May 1919, but, although registered K-110, later GEABU, it did little flying. A third military Badger was built, however. This aircraft, J-6492, was the true Badger II, powered by a 450 horsepower Cosmos Jupiter 1, and having full military equipment. Its fin and rudder were originally similar to those of the F-3496, but at a later stage a balanced rudder was fitted, and the ailerons were given airfoil-type balances. The engine installation was fitted with inner cylinder baffles. Much valuable flying was done with the Badger-Jupiter combination. The unexpectedly high cost of developing the engine broke the Cosmos Company, which closed down in February 1920. The Jupiter engine passed the newly imposed official 50-hour type test. It was, in fact, the first engine to do so, while the company was in liquidation. Largely as a result of government pressure, the Bristol Airplane Company took over the Cosmos assets and all patents and parts for the Jupiter engine. The Badger II, J-6492, was fitted with a 385 horsepower Jupiter II, which had an epicyclic reduction gear and improved valve gear. A cowling of unusual form was fitted, and armament was removed. In this form, J-6492 was flown at the Royal Aircraft Establishment, Farnborough, and helped to secure the success of the Jupiter II and the future of the Bristol Jupiter series of engines.